Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Chatting with the Lightkeeper. I hope wherever you are listening, you are having a fantastic day and that your week is going absolutely amazing. I think spring has sprung in my neck of the woods, even though it's early March. My daylilies are coming up more rapidly now, and I think I will have my crocuses completely up and in bloom probably within the next 2 weeks, which would be the earliest I can remember it, and I can start to see sprouts where the daffodils are coming up. So I think spring has arrived early here near the shores of Lake Huron. But in other exciting news, I am taking a break from my oh examining of websites to find a deal on a flight to Reno Tahoe International because you see Donner Pass is projected to get 10 feet or more of snow in the next few days, and it's a cold storm, which means it's coming down from Alaska. And snow in the Sierra Nevada Sierras are my favorite place to ski that I've found so far in the United States. The snow comes in two different types, basically. They have the cold snow, which is what is coming, and because it's cold and filled with all this moisture, it comes quickly, which of course is leading to 10 feet in Donner supposedly. It'll be interesting to see how it actually stacks up in reality. Reality will probably be there that when this podcast drops on Tuesday, have reality. But this snow is the light, fluffy powder snow that if you ever see ski videos or people skiing and the snow is flowing all around them as they ski down the mountain, this is what it is. And it's very heavenly because it's a weird sensation. I'm a Midwestern person, so deep powder is something that I don't get to experience all that much. Knee deep, waist deep sometimes. Waist deep, definitely if I head up to the wilds of the Michigan's Upper Peninsula, up onto the Keweenaw, where there's this lovely little ski hill called Mount Bohemia, where they get more snow than Aspen, Colorado, more snow than Park City, Utah. And they have a nice sign that says, "If you're a beginner, go home." So that's my little escape thing. And the funny thing about Michigan is that is the same drive time as for me to go from my house to New York City. So it's within the state, but yet I can get to New York City in the same amount of time it takes to drive within my state to go skiing. Craziness. But anyway, it's this light, fluffy snow, and this is just going to be an epic storm, and I want to ski it. I am not normally very impulsive by nature. Sometimes I am. Obviously, this time I am. Really want to get there. Really want to experience it. And of course, airlines, because it's a late booking and whatnot. Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily want to drop, $1,200 for a coach. And then, of course, because it's a storm that's going to be moving from the west to the east, I don't want to have to change planes in someplace like Salt Lake City where the storm would be hitting next. So, yeah, it's kind of an adventure that I'm on. And before I forget, the other kind of snow that falls in the Sierras is heavy, wet snow that is called Sierra cement, which is great for the ski areas because it builds a nice base and the snow grooming machines do groom it up nice. But for, you know, skiing the more challenging terrain or possibly even going into the backcountry, Sierra Cement is not your friend and Sierra Cement is avalanche prone. So definitely not the ideal thing for backcountry forays, but this is powdery puff pow. If I don't know if anybody on Instagram sees those um, videos, there's a father-daughter, and the daughter is young and snowboards, and she likes to talk about pow, which is the new fun way to say powder, which is awesome. So that's my little struggle right now, trying to find a cheap flight to Reno Tahoe. I'm not a big fan of wanting to try and drive back over. say from getting a flight from Detroit, which would be the closest major airport to me, to San Francisco, and then trying to have either navigate uh, avalanche-prone US 50 up and over the Sierras, or you know try and pray that I-80 somehow stays open. And well, it's California, it's snow, so I-80 is not going to stay open. So I really need to have a plane drop my butt in Reno. So that is my current little thing going on in my life. Whether it comes to pass or not, I guess you'll have to tune in next week and find out. Now, in the meantime, to satisfy myself, since I am not, I'm striking out on a decent price airline ticket. Although I should correct myself, I did find one, but I've refused to fly Spirit Airlines. I've heard nothing but horror stories, and since this would involve changing planes somewhere with Spirit, yeah, no, not happening. So, anyway, to amuse myself and hopefully entertain and educate and amuse you guys a little bit, and gals, I should just say guys, even though it's, for me, we're using guys as um, has no sexual reference, just it means people, but just to be clear on that. We'll talk about one of my favorite things about BDSM today, and that's aftercare. I love aftercare. It's just a special, unique kind of bonding time between me and my submissive after we engage in play of any kind. It's just it's awesome sauce. Um, and aftercare is something that gets talked about fairly often, but yet isn't necessarily talked about, in my opinion, sometimes in the right way. Um, and what I mean by in the right way, um, you'll see posts online where it says if you're dominant, or if a dominant doesn't provide aftercare, they're not a real dominant. That one always kind of catches in my craw. If you are in a relationship with an amazing person that is your dominant or submissive, and after you have a fantastic scene, the ixnay, the aftercare, then yes, there are problems there. However, if you have a friend with benefits, or you go to your local dungeon for a BDSM play party, and you do a scene with somebody. Once again, it doesn't matter what side of the slash, whether you're the dominant, the submissive, the top, or the bottom, and you haven't had the negotiation for aftercare, where you negotiate what you need, and they negotiate what they need or what they're willing to give, either way. And then after your casual play time is over in the scene and you don't get the aftercare you want, it doesn't make them a bad dom sub or whatnot. You were playing casually and you didn't specify your needs. And therefore, yeah, I'm sorry your needs didn't get met. But it doesn't mean the other person's bad. It just means they stuck to the agreement and you didn't negotiate it, and they might not be a fan of doing aftercare with somebody casually. And yeah, it's on you. It's not on them. So anyway, that's my aftercare pet peeve. After this, it's all goodness. I don't think I have any more pet peeves in store for the rest of this little chat. So what aftercare is, if you don't know, is when we engage in any kind of BDSM play, a scene, we do anything BDSM related where it's arousing, playing, uh, our brains will release all of our little happy chemicals in our minds. And that makes everything feel just outstanding. And it feels amazing. We feel good. The thing is when we're done playing, our brain stops giving us all of our feel good juices. So there's a bit of a coming down that happens after play. And this is why aftercare, when you're with somebody or you have negotiated, um, is so very important, because this is kind of a time where we kind of come out of our little BDSM buzz, if you will. And it's important to have the emotional, psychological, and physical support we need when we're coming down from our BDSM butts. There is another extreme sort of beyond that, what I'll call the BDSM buzz. Um, and when people come down sharply or very hard, it's called drop. This can happen to submissives and dominants. Submissives, it's much more common. It's called sub drop, and also the opposite is true for doms. It's called dom drop, and it can happen. Um, and it's harder, kind of more of a crashing down that drop brings. So aftercare is that kind of keeping it in the drinking metaphor. Aftercare is what kind of keeps us from being hungover. We have the cuddles, we have emotional and psychological support, we have physical support. If you just had your bum spanked and it's all warm and ouchie, a soothing lotion, rubbing some aloe, those types of things, just sort of to calm things down. So it is essential, in my opinion, if you are in a partnership with somebody, that aftercare is part of the play. It needs to be. It can't be, okay, we're done with the spanking scene. I'm rolling over and going to bed now because my arm is tired. No. Aftercare is essential in a relationship. And as I said before, if you are playing casually, it's on you to negotiate your aftercare needs. And it's, once again, my opinion, but it's better to ask for more than you think you'll need, just in case you do need that more in your aftercare. Since it is casual, there's nothing wrong with saying, "Hey, I know I said I needed 30 minutes of cuddles. I don't know how long it's been. It hasn't been 30 minutes yet, and I'm feeling pretty good. I don't need cuddles. Do you need more cuddles? Okay, we're good." So it's very important, like I said, if you're casually playing, to negotiate that, and if not, expect aftercare to be there because, like I said, we get intense emotions, we get our feel good chemicals going in our brains, and aftercare is what lets us have that soft landing after playtime. And the soft landing is also, for me, I don't judge people who play casually. In fact, there are times I wish I was wired where I could do that for the release that it brings. For me, casual play doesn't satisfy me. It leaves me wanting more because I crave the mental emotional connection that is there. So it's just, I don't know where I was going with that. Um, I guess for me, I guess where I was going with that is sometimes I wish that I could do the casual play and have to negotiate, aftercare because it's casual, but it's not me. And I think part of that drives. Here we go. Train of thought has returned to the station. Um, for me, because I am with somebody that I care about, the aftercare is it's a time of intimacy and a time of bonding. And I have not found anything that correlates to that in my vanilla experience where it's as intimate and as bonding as aftercare is uh, in the BDSM realm for me. So that is why aftercare is my favorite thing. So with that said, let's talk about some of the different things that goes into aftercare. Um, First of all, understand what you think you might need. Talk about it with a partner. Let them know. Even if you're with a partner that you've been with for 10 years, if you feel that something new aftercare wise might help, bring it up and give it a try. But always be willing to talk about your preferences and your needs, or even what you think you might need, or talk about having a plan together for, well, what happens if I get the sub drop or the dom drop and it's 2 days from now? How let's have a plan of how to deal with that. Um, so it's very important to have a plan for aftercare before you get into aftercare. Have a plan. And if it's with a newer partner, please talk about it with them. Um, in fact, I always, when I am in the infancy of a relationship and things are building, uh, I will work on planning the aftercare before I work on actually planning a scene. I will have the details of the aftercare worked out and then work kind of backwards. Start with the aftercare and then work into the scene and work it through backwards. Maybe I'm just backwards. That's always a possibility, but that's how I always approach it. Um, so anyway, when it comes to aftercare, there is of course the physical comfort, which is awesome. It's the cuddling, it's the holding, hand holding, getting curled up under a blanket, and you'll see a lot of things where aftercare is talked about making the submissive feel safe and secure after play, and that is very important. And in most cases, and in most times, the submissive is the most vulnerable after play. But sometimes, um, even the most experienced dominant will have vulnerabilities after play, and they will need aftercare, just like just like the submissive is used to receiving. So, submissives, please, when we're going through and talking about aftercare, remember to sort of, while you're recovering, keep an eye out on your dominant to make sure they're doing okay as well. And since they're a dominant, sometimes it's not dumbly to say, "Hey, I'm struggling a little bit or feeling a little different this time." So submissives, do keep your eye on it, and if you do see something where they're just a little different, um, either ask them or just maybe when you're able to kind of give them a little bit of, you know, aftercare as well. And the others, in addition to obviously the physical comfort, is being supportive emotionally. Whether you're dominant or submissive, offer emotional reassurance, offer validation. Often this is through verbal affirmations, or even just listening to each other, because sometimes in aftercare, we will, be having a conversation, and sometimes feelings and emotions sort of um, come out of our mouths like, I don't know how to say this politely, like word vomit. Because we're in a comfortable, feeling safe place, and with all the chemicals that are coming and going in our bodies, things might just come flying out of our mouths. So it's very important to be attentive, be listening, actively listening, and sometimes expect the unexpected things to come from our partner's mouth because we're in a space where we feel safe. We are in a a spot where we can express our vulnerabilities. So aftercare can be a place where we occasionally word vomit on our partner or partners. Another thing that's very important with aftercare is hydration. It very much is, with a side of nutrition. And when I say hydration, I don't mean going and having a glass of wine or anything that is um, intoxicating, uh, whether that is liquor or uh, marijuana. It is just a time for water, and it is time for snacks. Because as we are recovering, our sugar kind of, we get that sugar buzz sometimes from eating sweets. This is a great time to have a few snacks, to maybe have a couple of cookies together with some water or Gatorade, or whatever it is you use to hydrate yourself, along with some nutrition. And this is one of those times where, provided you're not having to mm, monitor your blood sugar, it is a good time sometimes to add a little something sugary and yummy to the mix. And please excuse me for just a moment. Um, it is 6:30 on the dot, and I don't know if you've heard the commotion in the background, but my phone alarm is going off, and I have Jeremy Clarkson currently screaming, "Wake up, wake up, wake up," which, well, it's a long story. Let me turn that off and I'll be right back with you. All right, Mr. Clarkston has been silenced. The reason why I have Jeremy screaming at 6:30 p.m. is I've shared before that I sometimes have a tendency to work too late into the evenings, and it goes on with the alarm happens 7 days a week because I will on a Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon do something work related, maybe clean up my calendar in my phone and my computer, so everything is fresh and sharp. Um, so the little alarm, and trust me, Jeremy Clarkson screaming, "Wake up, wake up, wake up," is very annoying and gets your attention immediately. Um, so yeah, that's why that was screaming at me. But that is now fixed. So we were talking about hydration and nutrition. Part of aftercare, it's great to have water or your hydrating beverage of choice handy, maybe pre-planned in a secret stash location. So, if you're a dominant, you can be all smooth and have it right there after play. Like, oh, look, here's some cookies and here's some fruit and here's our hydrating zesty beverage. So it's important to do that. Warmth can also be something that can be important because sometimes we feel cold after play. Perhaps play was intense and you've worked up a sweat, and now that it's done, you're feeling chilly. Or sometimes the chilly feeling happens because of the change in our brain chemicals from happy-go-lucky happy time to working on getting back to normal. And sometimes people get chilly or cold during that process. So having a warm, comfortable blanket at the ready is always a good thing. And of course, we have check-ins and communication that are all a part of this process. Um, you're checking in, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And the check-ins go both ways, dominant to submissive, submissive to dominant, or top to bottom, bottom to top. However you're playing, you're always wanting to check in, make sure that your partner is uh, doing fabulous and they're, you know, doing well as they recover or sort of return to normal, perhaps we should say. Um, and the other thing I want to talk about here is oftentimes I talk about it and I call it a debrief. And this is once we're done with the scene, and I don't like to wait too long to have the debrief. I do like to kind of let aftercare do its thing, but before it's all wrapped up, the aftercare, um, if my partner's up to it, talk about what we did, how it made them feel, what worked for them, what didn't work for them. Trust me, things don't always work as we want them to work. Um, and perhaps talk about things that need to get changed for next time or things you want to explore next time. This went really well. I found myself liking this. How about we try adding this to it, in the future? Um, and so you kind of have that debrief that's towards the end of the aftercare process. And it's important to circle back. Got my good old corporate conference call word in for the day. So if you are playing conference call bingo, and you had circle back, congratulations, you might be a winner. But the debrief is something you circle back to a few days, maybe a week after play, depending on when you're going to get Randy again and play some more. Um, and just verify, how things went to make sure that how it felt afterwards during the aftercare process is how it feels, 2, 3, 7 days later, that nothing has changed. Because sometimes we do change when we have time to digest and process things. And of course, with the whole process of aftercare, we want to relax. So some people do like to incorporate deep breathing, meditation, and always, aftercare is a great excuse to play amateur masseuse and give your partner a massage. So those are all parts of it. Now, there are two other little things that I find to be very important about aftercare that we should talk about. The first one, let's get the really not fun one out of the way right away. The not really not fun one is medical attention. Um, we know that BDSM play does contain some things that can be dangerous. Even, I know I've said this a zillion times, so I'll say it a zillion and one. Even a spanking can be dangerous if there is a slip up, a mistake, um, or by chance you are playing with somebody who is undereducated. Uh, so part of the aftercare process is checking in on how we're doing. Do we need any medical attention? And it's not just perhaps for the submissive. I have friends who are in the lifestyle and are diabetic. So there's been a time where I've had a friend share that their submissive partner, their blood sugar got way too low during a scene, and it necessitated them needing to provide, emergency medical attention that thankfully, they'd been partnered for ever and a day, so they knew how to handle it. And it didn't have to involve calling 911 or calling emergency services. Um, but yes, and also, now that I am over 50 years old, I've had friends that have heart conditions, um, from major to minor. And thankfully, I am blessed with a good ticker so far. But, you're looking at it a medical attention thing from the dominant side. Um, Things that happen in some scenes are very physically intense. And that can tax, somebody who might have a heart condition or have another medical condition altogether. So it's important to look at your partners, how are they actually doing physically? Do we have a medical situation? And I know that's not something that's fun to talk about, that we like to talk about. Even if you're, 21, 22, just getting started in life, medical things unfortunately happen, and it's very important that kind of during aftercare we actually check, be more, it's more than just checking in. We are observing and watching our partner or partners to make sure that they're all good, and have a plan. As much as this is unsexy, have a plan for if there's a need for whatever reason for medical attention. If your partner um, has diabetes, understand what to do if it's high, if it's low, how to check quickly, perhaps even have whatever medicine is needed, or if you use those testing strips or have the little deal with the phone where it shows blood sugar levels, understand how to check that for your partner right there, so that if there is the slightest little thing, you are prepared for it. It's all about being prepared as much as we don't want to talk about those unfun things. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is something that doesn't get shared a lot. Dominants need aftercare too. It doesn't mean a dominant is weak. It doesn't make them less dominant. In fact, many dominants, if you get to know them and they've been around the lifestyle for a while, they will have experienced the phenomenon of dom drop, where you kind of have a crash. It may come immediately after play, it may come a day, it may be 2 days later. But just like sub drop, it's just the opposite. The dominant is going to experience it. Um, and often dom drop can be related to doing things, let's face it. Some of the things dominants do during a scene are things that um, people are conditioned not to do in society. We are raised as children to not hit other people. Well, what are we doing when we give a spanking? We're hitting another person. Sometimes during play, some people enjoy, um, having dirty, filthy conversation, which may involve calling our partner dirty, nasty names, which once again goes against being a good person. You don't say some of the names that you call your loving partner when you're having a scene and playing. You might not dream of calling them that outside of playtime. Um, but it's a mutual, it's a consensual thing, and we're all on board. But you have to understand for dominance, especially dominance that I guess I'll use myself as an example. I'm somewhat of a sensitive person, if you haven't guessed that by now. Um, so I can feel a little perhaps ashamed after a an intense scene where, I've done things that society says that I should not be doing. So I know that if we are going to do certain things or I'm going to push certain buttons, that I am going to need reassurance and aftercare. I'm going to need my submissive to remind me that it's okay. Don't overthink it. Just because you spanked my bare bottom and my bottom is red and sore, it doesn't mean you are a rat bastard of a person like society might say you are. Or those names that you called me while we were playing, I know that you did it because you love me. And so reassurance is something that dominants will often struggle to ask for because, the whole domly dom thing, it can make it hard to ask for it. So just submissives, be aware that while you may need reassurance yourself, your dominant may need it as well. And to be aware that your dominant may suffer from a dom drop. And when I suffered my first one, it was back, way back when I first got started, and you did not. Back then, in the 90s, you didn't talk about mental health. You didn't. So even though I was feeling a bit depresso, it was smile and be happy to the rest of the world and keep this feeling inside me. And I actually, some, I believe my submissive basically cornered me and said, "Hey, spill the beans. What's going on? You're not the same. What's up? Something's changed." And, I eventually spit it out and we talked about it and it felt good to get it off my chest. And we went to Tuesday Munch group, um, and she brought it up. I was just like, oh, I can't believe she's sharing this with everybody here. We are the youngest people. This is pre-internet, so we were the youngest people there. And she's explaining what has happened, how I've been feeling, and I'm mortified, absolutely mortified that we're talking about these things that at the time you didn't talk about how you were doing mentally. And one of the, I guess you would say, old wise men, one of the old dominants that had, old school, old guard, um, got us started in back in the 50s when it was really underground. Explained that this was okay. It was natural. It happens to him. And then somebody else said, well, it happened to me. And it was a actually really impactful moment for me in my journey. And I think it was impactful for a few of the other people that were sitting around the table that night having the conversation. So understand that dom drop does happen. It may not be easy for your dominant, um, especially if they are a man, with the way society tries to lead men astray about not wanting to talk about certain things, which is total malarkey. And now that I am grown and matured and leveled up, I realize that. But I also realize that in the community, that is something that is still happening out there today. So understand that dominance will need reassurance at times, and dominance will have dom drop at times, and will need aftercare from their submissive, just like they give to their submissive. So the final sort of suggestion that I have, uh, and this you can do if you're submissive, you can put it together for yourself, or if you are in an amazing relationship, you're going to have your, amazing partner or partners, put together an aftercare kit. It's sort of the opposite of the first aid kit. It's the aftercare kit, which has the fun stuff. It has, your hydrating drink, your favorite blankets, some snacks. Perhaps, that's where you keep your first aid supplies. If you need an insulin pen or something to be possible part of it, keep it in the aftercare kit. But it's just a nice little, maybe you have a small suitcase, you slide under the bed or something. It's like, okay, we're done playing. Let's pull out the aftercare kit. And it's all right there, ready to go. Um, it's a fun kit to put together, which of course can lead to shopping together with your dominant or submissive. And it's kind of a fun shopping adventure to go on because you're buying things that are very vanilla but for a very fantastic purpose, which sort of, at least for me, it adds to the excitement of the shopping adventure because people have no idea, why the softness of this blanket that we're considering purchasing is very, very important. So it's fun, or the snack aisle, especially if, say, your submissive is or does have perhaps a little bit of a little tendency. The snack aisle can be a fun adventure. Um, but yeah, you can turn building the aftercare kit into a fun part of a date night, and no one needs to know that your date night is actually a very kinky thing because you're in an aftercare kit and putting it all together. So there is all of that that goes into aftercare. And the biggest takeaway, if anything, I could stress to you is a couple of things. First of all, if you're playing casually or you're playing with a friend with benefits, negotiate what you need aftercare wise. It's so important, and it's always best to ask for more than you'll think you'll need. So there's that. And then understand too, with the way our bodies and minds work, that we can do aftercare like we normally would in, say, you're in a wonderful relationship and you've been together for years, you've played. Sometimes aftercare needs resurfaced a day or two later. Maybe there's a drop that is, sub drop hits or down drop hits. Um, if that happens, you sort of need to go back to aftercare. That's really the best way to approach it. If it's possible to get together, be together, and redo aftercare, and you're really going through part of the withdrawal process after play. Um, so don't necessarily expect aftercare to always be in the immediate. Yes, it should always be in the immediate aftermath, but understand that it may need to continue into day one, the next day or the day after, or even a week later. There could be something that requires more aftercare. So it's not an immediately, okay, we've played, and aftercare typically takes an hour, hour and a half, or whatever it is for you. And now aftercare is done, and we move on to what's next. Be prepared that aftercare may be needed long after the scene has actually ended. And it doesn't matter your role, because submissives, you have a part to play in the aftercare planning routine, and that's to make sure that your dominant knows what your needs are. And if you see them evolving or changing, that you communicate that to them, because while dominants are many things, they're not mind readers. So if you are sensing changes or things you want to try aftercare wise, you need to speak up and share it with your dominant. And for the dominants out there, when you go to plan your next scene, work it backwards. Plan your aftercare first, and then work backwards into your scene. Uh, you may, depending on the type of aftercare you want to do, you may have a scene in mind that you want to play out. And then once you've kind of decided on that, then work backwards. You have the kind of scene you want to have. But when you're working on planning the nuts and bolts, because actually scenes do normally require planning, you work backwards. You have the aftercare plan all set up, and then you work back into your scene. And I think that will make your aftercare much more enriching. So that's what I have on aftercare. If you have some thoughts on things that work for you in aftercare, that are perhaps different than what you see traditionally shared, please reach out and share some of those because those ideas can be golden for somebody else or give somebody a new idea or a new fresh perspective. So if something you enjoy aftercare wise is different than what you believe is sort of traditional, please reach out and share that. So next week, if anybody wants to share, we can talk about that and add to this little discussion. And speaking of next week, we are going to delve into the world of power exchange next week. So that's where we're going to go next week. And hopefully, before I record that podcast, I am going to go to Reno Tahoe International and ski some 10 feet deep POW. That is the secret goal. So I'll let you know whether that goal has come to pass or not. So, on that note, no matter where you're listening, if you haven't yet already, please click the follow button so you'll be notified whenever a new episode drops, which is scheduled every Tuesday. However, occasionally from time to time, I like to shake things up and throw in a bonus edition on a Thursday or Friday, depending on how the week goes, or if I have something I feel I want to get off my chest or say. So you'll always get notified to those. And well, on that note, have a fabulous week and make sure to practice good aftercare. And even if you don't have a reason, sometimes it's good to spoil yourself with a little kind of personal aftercare, which is a fun way to tell yourself to get some self care. Because often, as people, we don't invest in self care, but somehow shifting it to aftercare. Perhaps we had a brutally beaten day at work, and if we call it aftercare rather than self-care, it's easier for us to embrace it. So don't forget about that. Sorry, that just popped into my mind. So on that note, I'm going to call it good. I'll wish everyone a fabulous week, and I will chat with you again soon.